Today what we're going to try to do is do a special Lag Baomer program, which is more personal, more unique to our shul, which is something that I've been wanting to do, and I have some plans on how to expand it as well. But it's something that will give all of us an opportunity, like this Zoom has been. It's been an opportunity for us to get closer together, to get to know one another a little bit deeper. And I want to take it to the next level, which means that today on our Zoom, what I would like to do is to interview. I tried to collect a few questions, but to interview two outstanding members of our Kehila that we all know and we all love, but to get to know a little bit more of their personal story. And that is none other than Moshe Lashinsky and Henry Israel. So I know we all have some good questions for them. Yes, they deserve a big round of applause because they have both dedicated so much of their time for our shul and for our kehillah, and I'm really excited about this. Like I've mentioned in the past, we have a chat button down below, and you know that chat button. If you want to send in some questions either privately to me or to everyone, you could. I'm not saying we're going to be fielding all of those questions, but we might be fielding some of those questions. So I'm going to start with Moshe, because Moshe is really a pillar of our shul. He's the Gabbai of our shul for many, many years. He has a lot of history also knowing the community and the shul. And we could just open the mic for him and he'll keep on talking. He has so much to say about so many different things. But we're going to try to ask specific questions to try to get some information out of Moshe that we're all curious to know, and some ideas I had from other people. And this is just one idea that I had to spice things up this Tuesday, and we'll see. We have some other ideas in the planning for following Tuesdays. And every single Tuesday we're going to have a special programming. So without any further ado, I would like to put Moshe on the screen here. It's a little bit of a light behind you, Moshe, so it's hard to see you very, very clearly, but we are able to see you. And that is, Moshe, could you turn the screen a little bit to the side so we don't see the window as much? If you turn the screen to, there you go, that's a little bit better. So then we're able to see you more. And that is to ask you, Moshe, to tell us a little bit of your story, where you were born. We know you have this Israeli side to you, but we know you have this American side to you, and you're connected to these two worlds. And a lot of the members are curious to know, is Moshe Israeli or is he American? Where did you grow up, and what were the years that you spent in America? Tell us your story.
I was born in Jerusalem, Palestine, 1 month before the 36, 39 Intifada, if you want to call that. Used to call that Mo'oraot.
Okay.
And in 1942, I went into Chorev School, which was our elementary school, not only mine, but also my wife's. The Chorev School was established by German Jews, Dr. Falk Schlesinger, who eventually became also the head of the Shaare Tzedek Hospital.
So you started elementary school in Chorev 6 years, or 6 years before the state of Israel?
At the age of 6.
At the age of 6, but that was 6 years before the state of Israel.
Yeah, it was 1942.
Amazing, amazing. Where was that located at the time?
At that time, it was located in the Gan Ha'ir, diagonally across from the Yeshurun Synagogue, where you have another religious institution or some kind of an institution right now. But that was its primary location. And it was there until, for me at least, until May 14th, 1948. On that day, actually a few weeks already before that, we were transferred to across from Bikur Cholim, where they had barracks. And on the 14th of May, I saw the last English parade out of Bevingrad, which was located in Binyan Generali, leaving this city, thank God. Anyways, that was the elementary school, and it so happened that my wife Miriam, over here in the back, also went in the same grade as I did, being a little bit more, I guess, liberal then than it is today. Boys and girls went together in the first and second grade. And then we afterwards also happened to join the Ezra.
Wait, so let me ask you, are you guys elementary school sweethearts or high school sweethearts?
That's go into the story to find out. Uh, Ezra
I want to
was
hear. I want to hear Miriam's side of the story on this one.
Moshe was after me from kindergarten.
Aha! The truth comes out. Moshe was
anyhow.
chasing Miriam from kindergarten.
No, anyways, truthfully, we'll find out the story a little bit later. Anyhow, as far as the Ezra was concerned, that was a youth organization already founded in Germany and transplanted into Israel. It was located where the Horus synagogue is today, where I notice a couple of goldwirts are listed now because of the problem that we have as daveners in the morning at various times that they stagger in their backyard. But at that time, it was a regular Beit Knesset Horeb, mostly German Jews. Rabbi Yitzchak Boyer Zitzal was a founder. Then afterwards, Rabbi Yakovovich, who lived across the street from us, also. Anyhow, 1948, sixth grade, that's when the state, actually before that, in November, they woke me up at 12 midnight to show me everybody dancing on the street. But as far as when the state was born in 1948, on May 14th, we were tremendously under attack. My father was in the Haganah since the 36 already. And as such, it was not a celebration in terms of that particular day, but we became Israelis on that day. The
Your father was out fighting. He already went out.
Yes, he participated in the capture of Katamon on the last day of Pesach in 1948, and we had, of course, quite a number of casualties and people that we knew that gave their life. Life became very, very difficult in 1948.
How many siblings were you guys living here in
I
Yerushalayim?
have a brother. I have a younger brother, 5.5 years younger. He's in the States. He's a physician. The continuation from there was that we stopped school. Now, that reminds me of a period now that many people with young kids face. We could not go to school anymore after May 14th. Briefly across the street, the Rebbe had given us a couple of classes of Gemara, but generally, I just must say that the school was basically from 8 to 1:30, and it included Gemara and Cheshbon and Anglit. So it was a real good background. And above all, being of a German background, they also had very many trips around Jerusalem, walking the various locations, whether it was Matzah and Karem, all around, became very familiar with the neighborhood of Jerusalem.
Amazing. Did anything change after the War of Independence for you? Did you move to a new location? Like, what was the change of your life, your personal life, before the state and after the state?
Well, as far as I was concerned, we lived 2 houses away from where Rabbi Wein lives now, on the corner of Radak and Al-Fasi. In between, there was an empty lot where the Arabs used to come with their shepherds and their goats, and once in a while had some kind of an interaction there with them. But,
so that was the main thing that changed. They stopped coming over there.
Yeah, but as far as we were very much into the situation at the time. It was not a very pleasant, we had to stand in line for water. People got killed because they had to wait in line for the trucks to deliver water. Electricity was very sparse at that point. And they also changed the daylight savings time 2 hours ahead. So it would be less and less need for electricity in the evening.
Wow, amazing.
But as far as I was concerned, sure, look, while we were kids, we were able to go to the Chulva synagogue. We were able to go into the old city. We went, of course, and many, as I said, many of the trips were in areas that you couldn't go anymore after the 48-49 war.
That was so the main thing that changed for you as residents of Rechavia is that you didn't have access to the old city at all for those 19 years. As a kid, you used to go, and now you couldn't go anymore at all.
That's right. Of course, not the full 19 years because I wasn't here the 19 years. But at first, we could go up to Har Zion. Har Zion became the substitute, so to speak. People would go up there on the Chagim for the purpose of viewing the old city, although you couldn't see the Kotel from where at least I stood. And that was, as I said, a substitute site for the old city.
Okay, so
And,
tell us when did you guys move to America then? I
well, as
mean,
far as my mother was
how
concerned,
did you and fabulous Miriam decide to get married? Did she really? Is it really true that you were chasing her since kindergarten? I think this is the most important question of the whole interview. This is what everyone in shul wants to know.
okay, let's put it this way then. I went to the States in 1951 for the last time and stayed there until 1992 when we got back. In between, of course, we visited here a good number of times. My oldest son was bar mitzvahed over here at the Kotel, and also in Renanim, he was he also lay there on that Shabbat of his bar mitzvah. Now, as far as in 1956, as you know, when there is Yizkor, people go outside. And that's where I recognized Miriam and her sister Aviva. And that's where it got started, really.
A Yizkor Shidduch. A Yizkor Shidduch. Amazing. Amazing.
Yad HaAshgacha, as she
Yad
said.
Hashgacha. Of course, we know Kashe Zivukam Kekriyat Yamsuf. This is the time period of, and after
Right.
Lag Baomer, it's the time really of celebrating weddings again. So that's why it's a very important question.
But
Okay, wait. So I'm gonna jump Moshe to Miriam a second. Miriam, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Yerushalayim in Rehov, in Shchunat Even Israel, which was between Agrippas and Rehov Yafo.
And you guys went to the same Ezra together also?
Right. We went. My mother was I was born in Tel Aviv. But when the Italian bombed Tel Aviv, my parents moved to Yerushalayim.
Wow, amazing.
And I went to school with Moshe. The main thing is that in 1956, I have three sisters. We are four girls. My father promised me that I could come back to Israel. I was about to come back after the Chagim, and I was outside on Yizkor in Borough Park, Knesset Bet El. And I say to my sister, looking at the guy, I said, this guy is taken for sure. He's too good looking. Moshe had hair. And Moshe came over and he says, are you Miriam Taube? And I said, yes. Where do you live? And I told him, and he asked me to wait for him till he finishes school, and we will go back together to Israel, which was, thank God, in 1992, after having
the story,
and
how they
two
met.
of them married, one
Can't hear.
in Israel, and Baruch Hashem, all of them have children and grandchildren.
Okay, so first of all, this is very amazing, very, very amazing. So I just want to get this straight because I don't know this myself, and many of our members don't know it as well. So you met in America, correct?
Right.
So
true.
what brought
True.
each of you individually to America, and how long did you stay there after your wedding?
Okay, so she just mentioned it.
My father, my mother, Valea Shalom, came from Hungary, and she decided in 1932 there is no future for Hungarian Jews in Hungary. So she came to Israel. My father came from Hungary in 32 on his way to the United States to be with his family, his father and his siblings. But he met my mother, and World War II erupted. So he got the papers to go on 1954, and he met his father and his brothers, and he came back to take us.
So he was in America. You grew up in Eretz Israel until 1954. You went to school in Chorev, and then in 1954 you went to America. 1956 you went to America.
Went to the teacher seminary, Ephrata, became a teacher,
Leibowitz.
and Nechama Leibovich was my teacher.
Amazing. Wait, so Moshe, back to you, Moshe. When did you go to Chutz La'aretz?
I went in 1951, and my mother was American, so there was no problem going there. When I got there, eventually I got to Rabbi Jacob Joseph, RJJ as it's known, on the Lower East Side. And in 1954, I went into the City University, City CNY, School of Technology. Very amazing situation there. At the first assembly they put us in, we were all prospective engineers. They say, there are 1,000 people here, 1,000 people who want to be engineers, only 250 are going to make it. That was very encouraging at the time. Anyhow, in RGJ, by the way, we had teachers that had been like also with David Hammer, who I'm sure shared same teachers. And as long as we were talking about Lag Baomer, 2 events. Ezra always had a bonfire on Rehov Narkis, where number 9A building is located there. Everybody assembled. The entire group entourage of Ezra went there. And in RJJ on Lag BaOmer, we used to go to a field on the Lower East Side, and one of the Rebbe's was a catcher, and another one played another field. It was part
Lag
of
Baomer baseball game.
But Lag BaOmer was always somehow, during at least the first 12 years of my life, at least I recall, that was.
Okay, so I want to now fast forward a little bit back to our shul, because this is really what's nogea to all of our members.
Well, before, I just want to say very quickly that after I got out of CCNY and School of Technology as a civil engineer, I took some graduate work as well, but I went to work for a private guide. And I worked there, it was August, and it came to November, it was out in New Jersey, and I lived in Brooklyn. How are you going to do this? I mean, you work out in the field, you can't leave the guy at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I signed up with the city of New York. At that point, I was assigned to the Transit Authority. And lo and behold, from 1958, November 58, until I left them in August of 1985, 86 rather, I had worked myself up from a junior engineer to become the deputy chief engineer of all the construction of the Transit Authority. And mind you, Shomer Shabbat, didn't have to answer phones on Shabbat, but it worked. And I always have to pinch myself that I ever got to that position. So that was the golden Medina, you know. At that point.
A tremendous opportunity, which is really, really amazing. From the first half of this conversation, I'm taking out for my generation that back in the day, a young man would just go up to a young lady and say, "Are you Miriam Tauber?" And that's it. That was it. We don't do it. Halavai, our young generation had the courage to do it like that.
Well, that is one of the things that a youth organization does. My children, when we moved to Staten Island from Brooklyn, well, she was a teacher 26 years in Shulamit in Brooklyn and 13 years in Yeshiva of Flatbush, also in Flatbush, Brooklyn. The children all went to Bnei Akiva in the young
and then they get 100%. And they have the camps now and things like that. Yeah. Okay, so I want to fast forward to our shul. So you guys came to Israel in the 90s, early 90s. How did you get involved with Hanasi Shul? What did the shul look like then? And also describe to us the transformation of how it went from what it was to what it is today as mainly an Anglo Saxon type of shul, like that process, because you were there and that's why you are our leading gabbai for all these years.
Well, more than I was a president for 12 years of the shul.
Yes.
And also, of course, gabbai. But Grubi David Ben Alav Shalom somehow got a hold of me. He himself came to Yerushalayim only about a half a year or so earlier from Be'er Sheva, where he spent his first number of years from 71 till 91 in Be'er Sheva, and he then subsequently moved to our neighborhood here, and he got a hold of me. And we got involved. And first of all, as Shliach Tzibur, I started off as a Shliach Tzibur in the States already in 1968 in Yeshiva Eitz Chaim of Borough Park, where my oldest son graduated. The younger son only spent 3 years because the school closed up, and we moved also to Staten Island. But I carried through from 68, first in Borough Park, then in the Young Israel of Staten Island, as Shliach Tzibur on the Chagim and on other occasions. And Rabbi Lerner there, Alav Shalom, Chaniet's husband, was the principal and the Rav in that yeshiva. And he also eventually made Aliyah. He came, spent a couple of years with us.
So when you came into the shul, it was mainly an Israeli shul?
At this time, it certainly was mainly an Israeli shul, and certainly even the board meetings were in Hebrew. Even the board meetings, certainly all the minutes were written in Hebrew. Now, I can only say my grandmother, when she came to Israel from Germany in 1933, she lived in Rehov Aharon, which happens to be now Rehov Haran. Why they changed it? Because there was another Aharon evidently in Keren Abraham.
I'm actually broadcasting from Rehov Haron right now, Rehov Haran. I'm in my parents' house. This is not my house.
Ah, all right. Oh, there it is. And they spent their life until their final days in the Beit Knesset. But the transformation in 1992 was such that it was Dr. Rosengarten, Dr. Hecht, and Mr. Rivlin, and many others, not that many. The place was not full. And in fact, it was probably in the capacity that we had in recent few months ago in our shul. In other words, when it's not the holidays.
Right. So when did the transformation happen? Was it the building of the Wolfson Towers that brought more Anglos?
The building of the Wolfson Towers took place in the 70s. And many of the Americans who made Aliyah had bought and purchased apartments in the Wolfson Towers. And when they retired, they found a place. The word got on very quickly that there is an English-speaking society, and the announcements when we did make them and with English, and now Rabbi Wein came summers in 1993 and 4 already, having summer programs for 6, 7 weeks. Subsequently, in 1997, he made Aliyah. So and then he really grabbed a lot of people into our shul.
So that was the big boost for the shul. When Rabbi Wein came in 1997, right. A lot of the Anglos from the community said, "Oh, here is
right.
Mara de Asra, a special figure."
No, it became a community. It was a women's league. Yom Yerushalayim was celebrated already to an extent with meals and things like that. And of course, we always said Hallel on both Yom Ha'atzmaut and Yom Yerushalayim. And of course, we follow the Gra tradition, which is, of course, we're all familiar with it at this particular point, not saying the Shamru on Friday nights and so forth.
That's right. That's right.
The place became bigger and bigger. And, the shul initially was started in 1932. But until 1975, it was like in a tin shack. 1975, the shul that you presently know was built up. Mr. Goldschmidt, Alav Shalom, who was also the first teacher who taught us on Shabbat afternoon between Mincha and Maariv, and that also was all in Hebrew. He was very instrumental in supervising at the time the construction of the building. So we must be very, very thankful to the effect that we walked in to something really ready.
Built.
Right. Now, we, of course, had done quite a bit of other things since. I mean, we have built an extra stairway from the women's section down because it was really one entrance. We had, we put in an elevator. We put in new furniture upstairs, eventually downstairs too. And
Amazing.
also,
You were president from what year to what year of the
I
shul?
think it was 96 to 202, and from 204 to 210, something
Uh-huh.
like that.
Wow, wow. So
And
you
then
see,
Henry came in.
okay, so that's a good leeway to our transition, because first of all, this is a tremendous opportunity for me personally as the associate rabbi, but also for our members of our kehillah that are here on the call, and even the ones that aren't here on the call, to give you a personal, you and Miriam, a personal Yasher Koil, because you guys have dedicated so many years and time and energy of your life to build our kehillah, to build our shul, to build that community feeling. And you were there from the beginning. And I don't think many of our members got a chance to hear the whole story. And even though this was just little tidbits, I still feel it's such a unique opportunity.
And we're all getting it back at this point as for a repayment. However, I did forget to mention that I worked, when I came to Israel in 92, I had worked 13 years for the municipality involved with the light rail construction.
Wow, wow, amazing, amazing. It's really a tremendous, and that's why I felt to spice up our regular shiurim, it would be nice to get to hear your story, yours and Miriam's story, and to hear a little bit more about our shul and the background of it. And it's really phenomenal and an amazing opportunity. And I want to really take this opportunity to thank both of you for all that you've done for our shul. And I would like to take this opportunity to segue on to Henry. Henry Israel, it was, he was the president when I came into the shul a few years ago. And he's also, I would say, the ambassador of the, I don't know how you would say it, of the royal monarchy states, all of our British contingencies and people. Maybe we have a few South Africans, so it's a real honor to close this unique opportunity, this unique interview with Henry Israel. And also, Henry, you are an outstanding member of our community, and you're so involved all these years. Also, tell us a little bit of background about where you grew up, and what made you guys come to Eretz Israel. When did you decide you want to come to Eretz Israel? So a little bit of a background.
I was born in London 3 months after the Second World War began. My parents had come from Germany, as did my maternal grandparents. Unfortunately, my paternal grandparents didn't make it, and they died in the Shoah, as did uncles and aunts. I grew up in England. We had no other family in England at all. I have, at that stage, I had 2 siblings, 2 older sisters. And after the war, another 3 siblings were born. So yes, we grew up in London, part of the Blitz, the German bombers when they came over. I remember the sound very well. When I hear it, when I listen to films, and they still have this shot of the bombers coming over with the drone that they did, plus the wailing of the air raid sirens, it sends a shiver down my spine. The sort of things you can't forget. Houses in our street were bombed, houses in our neighborhood were bombed. So yes, it's something which I remember pretty well. In 1944, Rabbi Eli Munk decided to start a Jewish primary school. That's the first grade school. Up till then, yes, there'd been a kindergarten, and I was taken to the kindergarten daily by my grandfather. And we had a very nice relationship.
What community is this in? This is Golders Green?
Yes, it is. It's Golders Green. My parents, when they came to London from Germany, they rented a house for about 10 months and then moved into another house also in Golders Green, where they lived for the rest of their lives. They lived there for over 40 years. Yeah, that's where I grew up.
And you and Francis went to the same school?
Strangely enough, for a short time, yes, I was there throughout my entire for the first years. Francis was born in a town north of London called Letchworth, because at the beginning of the war, people who were pregnant were being evacuated. The government planned to evacuate people away from London because they were afraid of bombing. And there was this in this town, Letchworth, one of the community people who was in the construction business had built 2 streets of workmen's cottages, and it was just very fortuitous that when the war began, his friends all approached him and said they wanted to rent houses there. So these houses, which he built as workmen's cottages, were rented out to these people, and Frances' family had moved there, and she was born in Letchworth.
So how this is again, I go back to these stories and questions all the time. How did you guys meet? Because we all know in our shul that all the successful men have really strong women behind them.
Okay.
The question is how you guys met.
Okay, let's run this thing forward quite a lot. I suppose it must have been when I was about 19, 20. There used to be an organization run by a man called Lady Geffner from the Jewish Agency, and they used to be called Hebrew seminars. And so they were held 3 times a year, at the Christmas holidays, the Easter holidays, summer holidays. And I'd met a girl there, and when the holiday ended, she said, "I will knit you a kippah, I'll crochet you a kippah." So I said, "Fine." And one day I get a phone call, she says, "I've finished it. Where shall we meet?" So I said, "Let's meet." There was a Jewish student place called Hillel House. I said, "We'll meet at Hillel House." Anyway, the night before, she phoned us, "I'm sorry, I can't make it." We set up another meeting. And eventually, the second meeting, she also couldn't make. And the third meeting, she said, "Look, I'm very embarrassed. What I'll do is I'll give this to a friend, and she'll meet you at Hillel House." And so this friend turned up.
She was just playing hard to get. She was playing hard to get.
Anyway, this friend turned up, and Hillel House also had a restaurant downstairs. So we went down and had a snack, and we're chatting away. And it happened to be Frances. And I then decided I would ask her out. So I asked if she liked opera. She said yes. I said, "Fine. I've got tickets from Madame Butterfly." And that was our first date.
First date. Wow.
But it so happened that I didn't have any tickets at all. Then I had to go out and get them. But since then we've seen Madame Butterfly very, very many times whenever there's a new production. So yes, that's where I met Frances.
Wow, wow, amazing. So where did you guys build your home? Like what community? What did you do? What shul did you go to?
Not far from where I was brought up in Golders Green. We moved to Hendon, which is it's the next area.
Next time over, yeah.
And that's where we set up home. At that time in Hendon, there were 3 shuls. There was the Hadass, there was the Hendon United Synagogue, which is the organization that Lord Rabbi Sachs eventually became the chief rabbi of. And there was also a Reform. And as I had been brought up in Hasidic Yeshivot in Golders Green, I decided I did not want to go to the Hadass, and I went to, we applied for membership to the United Synagogue, and that's when we became members, and we were members there for 40 years.
Wow, wow. Were you involved also in that shul over there in communal work in Sarchei Tzibur, like you are in our shul?
Yes, absolutely. I was a member of the board there for over 30 years.
Wow.
The board, they were really quite formidable, the people there. They were all, you had heads of industry, they were quite amazing, the people on the board. Anyway, they invited me to come on the board, and it was all terribly English because that's how the organization was. And so I had various positions eventually on the board, and I was responsible at one stage for the education committee. For example, the shul had on the Shabbat morning, they had a children's service, they had a youth service, and they had the main service. And at its heyday, it had over 2,000 members. On the Yom Noraim, they used to bring in wooden seats, saying because there's just no room. And it also, they used to have, at that stage, at the beginning, also the local cinema. They used to rent the local cinema for the overflow service. Unfortunately, over the years, it gradually contracted quite considerably. But yes, I was asked to chair the education committee.
So I noticed the people that are osik betzarchei tzibur be'emuna, that help in communal manners, they end up doing it forever, for a life, which is a big schus. It shows on people that they're doing it out of their love for the communities that they're involved in, which is really, we see that on you, Henry, which is a tremendous thing to see. Because the people who are involved, they're always involved. So tell us about the move. Like, when did you guys decide to make Aliyah? First of all, before the move, what was your profession over there in England? And then what made you decide, I don't know if you closed up shop and moved to Eretz Yisrael?
I was in the insurance business, but you asked what made us decide to go on Aliyah. I'd always been a member of Bnei Akiva. My two older sisters used to go to Bnei Akiva, and they took me with. So I started going to their group, so to speak, when I think I was 4 or even 6 years old. Of course, to keep me busy, they used to give me things to draw and things to do, but that was where I gradually moved on in Bnei Akiva. And when I left school, my father wanted me to go to Gateshead Yeshiva, which was not quite what I had in mind, but I'd already applied to go to Israel for the summer scheme, the Bnei Akiva summer scheme. The summer scheme in those years was over 6 weeks, because you didn't fly to Israel, you went by train and boat. So it took us a week to get to Israel. You took a train to the coast of England, then you took a ferry, then you took another train to Paris, from Paris to Marseille, and then you got a boat from Marseille to Haifa. And
Wow.
that took a week, and the same thing on the way back, 4 weeks in Israel. And at that stage, I had a sister living in Israel, and talking to her, she said, well, if you don't want to go to Gateshead Yeshiva, why don't you go to Yeshiva here? And I said, with what? So she said, she'll speak to somebody she knows at the Jewish agency. Cut a long story short, I ended up, and I went to Yeshivat Hadarom in Rehovot, where Rav Avital, who later became Rosh Yeshiva in Megush, at Yeshivat Har Etzion, where he was one of the senior Ramim there, and that was the yeshiva. So I spent a year there. When I wrote home and said, I'm not coming back because I'm going to go to yeshiva there, my father said, if you don't come home, I am not going to support you. I'm not going to send you any money. Anyway, I stayed a year. It's quite true. He didn't send me any money. He didn't support me. So in the October, the yeshiva, which also had a bit of a high school running there, asked me if I could help to teach English. They had a Professor Chain who used to come from Hebrew University in Yerushalayim to Rehovot every Thursday night, and he would teach the top class English literature. And he would teach them again on Friday morning, and then go home for Shabbos. But during the week, they had nobody to teach them. So they asked me if I could do that. And they were doing Macbeth, being Shakespeare's Macbeth. I'd never done it before, but you know how it is. You keep a few pages ahead of everybody else. So I taught English literature to the group, and for that I got a few shekel, which was enough to sort of keep me. And so that's what I did for the course of the year. And during that year, I'd made up my mind that I was going to come on Aliyah, and I was going to go and live in Israel. I couldn't say when, because at that particular place I hadn't yet got into any kind of profession. Anyway, I went back at the end of the year because also my sister was getting married in London, and that's how it was. I stayed in London and eventually went into the insurance business, and I worked for a Canadian company, moved up the ladder till I became one of their managers, and after 10 years I decided that was it. I'm now going to open my own business, which I did, and established my own insurance brokerage, and that is what I've developed over the years. And of course, we used
Wow,
to
that's amazing.
and
I know my grandfather, who's in insurance, had some dealings with you. He already also left the insurance a long time ago, but he told me he had some dealings with you in England.
Absolutely. I used to visit Israel frequently, and once the children were growing up, we used to come here every second summer and spend a few weeks here in Israel. And at one stage, I knew somebody in the Jewish agency, and they said, we really would need someone who could build a kesher, who could build a connection with Israel to help people. And I looked into the matter, and of course people were going on Aliyah. They were buying their cars in England, taking them across Europe on the ferry. They'd get to Haifa, and then they'd have to spend a day trying to figure out how they're going to get it out of the port because they had no insurance, they had nothing. So I made arrangements with an Israeli insurance broker, and eventually your grandfather, that I would have Israeli cover notes. So if somebody wanted to take their car to Israel, I could issue an Israeli cover note so that once they had paid their tax in the port, they could drive out straight away without any hold-up.
Wow.
And that's the connection that we did. And then afterwards, also, I extended that to people coming on Aliyah who wanted to insure their goods. At that time, the shippers all were doing the insurance, and they were charging a very hefty rate. I was able to cut that rate in half, and this is how we built the thing of the connection. And
Amazing.
through your grandfather's agency.
Amazing. So again, another living example of not only doing your business successfully, but doing it b'tzarchei tzibur, looking out for the community, looking out to help other people, how they can make Aliyah, which is such a fascinating thing. When did you guys make Aliyah? What year did you make Aliyah? And what made you come to Yerushalayim to Hanasi Shul?
Okay. So first of all, knowing Israel by then quite well, we liked Yerushalayim, we liked Rehavia. We had already 10 years earlier bought a holiday flat in Netanya, but as things were getting nearer to the time that I thought I would be able to leave my business in England, Francis and I decided we did not want to live in Netanya. We wanted to live in Yerushalayim. As I said, Rehavia was the area which we liked very much, so this is what we decided to do. So just before we came on Aliyah, we had bought an apartment here in Rehavia, and which eventually we did not live in, but that's another story in itself. And we came on Aliyah in 2003, which was the middle of the second Intifada. And in fact, 3 days after we'd arrived, and I was in Talpiot, as one does, buying furniture and one thing and another, I was standing in a shop to buy a bed, and a guy sitting there waiting gets into conversation with me. And when I mentioned I'd made Aliyah 3 days ago, he said, "Really? 3 days ago?" He said, "Where are you from?" So I said, "I'm from London." Somebody, is life so bad in London?
Amazing.
Yeah. So that's when we made Aliyah, and I've been happy here ever since.
Were there a lot of British members when you came to the shul in '93? It was?
So, no, 2003. No.
In 2003?
No, there weren't very many. There were literally just a handful. Most of the others have come since. But yeah, we came in 2003. But it was very nice. I had also been. I also took up membership at Chovave, and I used to govern Shabbos morning at Chovave, and at Knesset Hanasi used to go there on Friday night, and Shabbos Mincha, and used to the shir, and so on. But eventually I found that the Hanasi Kehillah were a far friendlier Kehillah, a far more homely Kehillah, and so therefore I gave all my time to Bet Knesset Hanasi.
Okay, amazing, and what an honor it has been for us. I'll ask you one final question, because you were there, which is important for me to find out as well. You were there you were the president when I came in to the shul as an associate rabbi. What was that transition? When did the shul decide that they want a young rabbi to come in, and what was that like? And with that, we'll close today's interview session.
I had been the vice president with Moshe being the president. I had various tasks on that thing. One of them was on the building committee, which and I refurbished downstairs place of Medrash, etc. But the other thing was I was pretty friendly with Rabbi Wein, and I also used to organize the yearly trips, the trips that we had, the midweek break, the 4 days away from Yerushalayim. And one day, Rabbi Wein and I were talking, and we were really talking about the future as to how and where the shul was going and what was going to happen. And when I was organizing the program for this midweek break, we'd arranged that on the last night there'd be a debate, and I had Jan Sokolovsky as the chairman, and I told her beforehand, please, as a last question, ask how we think the shul is going to develop and what is going to happen. And that was the question. One or two people stood up, and then Rabbi Wein stood up, and he said, as far as the shul is concerned, it's growing, and it will continue to grow, and we're doing good things. But I think you should also be looking to find an associate rabbi. Now, he and I had more or less projected this, and it came a lot better from him to say so, rather than for me to say so, because otherwise people would say you're pushing him out, which was certainly not the case, and still isn't the case. And we're very happy for Rabbi Wein to be our Moreh D'Asra, and we're delighted that you're here as well. We've got a great... Correct. So then, him having mentioned that, then by this time, as I say, I was also the president. At the next board meeting, we had to figure out what was going to be done, and we'd set ourselves a period of 12 months, and we had advertised it in various places, and we had some very suitable candidates. We even had a couple, we had two, I think, who came to be scholars in residence, and it became very apparent to us that if it was a rabbi from America with a family, certainly teenage children, there might be friction, because to try and uproot American children, to put them in Israel, and then to expect them to be here, we felt that would put pressure on the rabbi. And in the end, we decided we would therefore change the parameters. And I was, somebody had mentioned your name to me. I called you. I was absolutely delighted when we actually met, and I figured out we've got the right person here. And that's how, as I say, the rest is history.
The rest is history. I've been here now already 5 years, and I could truly say that it's an honor, and I feel that this is such a special community. Just the fact that we could have this type of interaction and session on Lag BaOmer shows how special and how unique our community is, and my personal feeling and relationship to the community. And I really want to thank Moshe and Henry for allowing and flowing with my crazy ideas. And when I threw this idea to them, you know, they were like, okay, let's do it. And it's been really, really special and really good. And I want to thank everyone here for listening and for bearing with us and for giving that support. And I think both Moshe and Henry, you guys, you gave us a window into your lives and a window into our shul's history. And for that, I want to thank you in the name of everybody. So thank you. And I look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow at 5 o'clock. We're going to give a special Parsha Shir, and Rabbi Wein is going to be on Thursday at 5 o'clock with a special Parsha Shir. So I'm going to unmute everyone, and thank you so much. It was a real pleasure and a real honor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.